and there's this simultaneous indwelling that brings everything together. And that idea of simultaneous indwelling, the reason I'm sharing that with you now, is woven all the way through the end-time scriptures. You'll see it over and over and over again. Because it's Jesus. So when we get ready to go into the next verse, and I'm not going to keep stopping and pausing, I'm just laying some foundational work that we'll use for the rest of this class, right? As we get ready to go in the next verse, Jesus does not waste words. The disciples said, when will these things be? What's the sign of your coming? What's the end of the world? And the very first thing that Jesus says is found in verse 4. Jesus answered them and said, take heed that no man deceive you. That does not quite seem like an answer to the question. The disciples asked, when will these things be? What's the sign of your coming? And what's the end of the world? Now, Kelly, if I asked you that, you wouldn't say, don't be deceived. Most likely you'd say, well, Buck, 70 AD, the temple's going to get destroyed. 2023, according to Buck, I'm coming back. Right? Not saying that, I'm just saying. 14-year-old Buck. And, and the end of the world will be 1,000 years after that. That's probably what we would answer because we're thinking, I need to give you the answer. What Jesus is saying, though, is what's the most important thing. They ask this question, when will these things be? What's the sign of your coming? When's the end of the world? And Jesus says, don't be deceived. That's Jesus' response. So that should tell us right there. When we're looking at these things, deception is around us all the time. It's our responsibility as we're looking at the end times events not to allow deception to come in. We've got to keep going back to the scripture. Jesus said, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. You're asking these questions, don't be deceived. Don't be deceived. Take heed that no man deceive you, because many will come in my name, saying that I'm Christ, and will deceive many. And when Jesus says many will come in my name, that word in the Greek means the apparent character. Jesus said, many are going to come in my apparent character. You will see them and you will think that they represent me. You will think that they represent my character. But they don't. Those people will represent me and my character, but they will lead you astray if you don't pay attention. That's why everybody in this room and everybody online, your responsibility is to judge the words that I'm saying. Because I'm coming to you in the apparent character of Jesus. Your responsibility is to tell whether or not I'm telling you the truth. The only way that you can do that is by comparing what I say to the scripture for yourselves. For many will come in my name, saying, I'm Christ, and will deceive many. You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Are we hearing of wars and rumors of wars? Absolutely. We've got Russia taking their nuclear train to the submarines. We've got Taiwan shooting over Japan. We've got Japan shooting over China. We've got China shooting over Japan, and China shooting over Taiwan. We've got all these things happening around the world right now, right? We have scripture that talks about, one of the scriptures that hasn't been fulfilled yet is the scripture about Samaria. So Damascus, it's called the Damascus prophecy. Scripture says that Damascus will become a ruinous heap. It will become uninhabitable. Damascus is known as the city on the face of the earth that has never changed names. In 4,000 years, the city has never changed its name. All the times it's been conquered and taken over and conquered and taken over, it's the one city that's never changed its name. We know exactly where Damascus is because it's always been the same. And it still exists. So that prophecy hasn't happened yet, but it's an end times prophecy. And when you read the end times prophecy about Damascus, it looks like a nuclear attack. I'm watching the news fascinatingly because if you look at what's happening with Syria and Damascus right now, I think I might have said Samaria before, with Syria and Damascus right now, there is a concern that Israel is going to attack, and they're wanting to know what's going to happen. Because it's becoming a hotbed right now. If you watch the news, Damascus is a hotbed for ammunition generation for the Iraqis and the Iranians. They're developing it, they're creating it there, and Israel is saying, you guys are becoming a serious threat, and they've already done some drone strikes. They're being more targeted, but they're getting to the point where their boiling point is hitting. I'm watching that with great interest because I'm kind of curious to see what's going to happen. You'll hear of wars and rumors of wars. Got that. Don't be troubled. Those things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So the one thing that the scripture says but doesn't say here is that the scripture is that these things will make us think that the end is close. Right? He said the end is not yet. The only reason why Jesus would say the end is not yet is if we were thinking that the end was, And he's just taking the stress off of us. He's like, look, you're going to hear of wars, you're going to hear rumors of wars, but don't be stressed out. This is not the end. Okay, keep next. Nation will rise against nation. Have we seen that? Yes. Kingdom against kingdom. So nations and kingdoms. Nations are geographical locations. United States versus China. China versus Japan, right? That's nations. Kingdom against kingdom. You could have Islam against Christianity. You could have Democrats against Republicans. Those are kingdoms, right? Kingdoms are people groups based on some kind of affinity or kingship. Nations are based on geographical borders. So nations rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There'll be famines. Have we seen it? Yes. Pestilences. Have we seen it? Yes. Earthquakes in diverse places. Have we seen it? More now than ever. Oklahoma. If you look at a map of earthquakes, Oklahoma City, we get more earthquakes here than LA. Pretty interesting. Why? Some people think it's fracking, right? Does it matter? I don't know. But when you look at a map, we're a really dark gray circle on a map that shows the intensity and the number of earthquakes. It's just kind of interesting. We're right out here in the middle of nowhere, but it's us. But all these things are happening right now. Here's the question though. Have these things happened prior to now? Have there been pestilence? Have there been earthquakes? Have there been, right? Absolutely there have. So these things in and of themselves are not enough for us to say that we're in the end times, right? Because these things have been happening for centuries, millennia in some cases, right? Kingdom against kingdom, nation against nation. As far back as I can remember, look at any history book, 4000 BC, you've got the Babylonians going against who, right? Were there pestilence or earthquakes? Absolutely, all over the place, right? So the fact that these things are happening is not enough, it's not definition enough for us to say, oh, this is a sign of the end times. This is just a piece. All of these are the beginning of sorrows. The beginning of sorrows. Note beginning in verse 8. That's a big thing. Because we're going to see end in just a little bit. So where there's a beginning, there's an end. Verse 8. All these are the beginnings of sorrows. Then they'll deliver you up to be afflicted. They'll kill you, and you will be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Doesn't that sound encouraging? Hey, you should become a Christian so you can get killed. That'll save a bunch of people, won't it? No. But you know what? The people that get who Jesus is, that give their lives to Him, they are willing to. They get it. Right? I mean, you get people in India, people in Pakistan, you get people all over the place that their lives every day are in jeopardy. The fact that they make a commitment to Jesus and get baptized in the open public, they set themselves up to be killed. And they still do it anyways. Why? Because they get it. Jesus is it. They realize it, and they're willing to sacrifice their lives. Right? Jesus says, you will be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Walk into a room of ecumenical leaders and say, Jesus is the only way. And watch how many Christians get uncomfortable. See how many people all of a sudden get frustrated with you when you start mentioning the name Jesus. I was on a client call today. It's interesting to me. I was on a client call today. It's a Canadian client. And I came into the meeting, the MS meetings room, and the gal says, well, speak of the devil. And I said, I don't think so. She said, well, you know what? It'd be probably, if you had to be the devil or something else, it'd probably be more fun to be the devil. And I'm like, no, I think I would much rather be Jesus. I said, I've played the devil before. I think I would rather be Jesus. And she said, but the hard parts, the evil parts are always the most fun. I'm like, well, for acting maybe, but I would still rather be Jesus. But it's interesting how the tone of the conversation shifted when I said the name Jesus on that call today. Very interesting. That was it. I just said his name. And people immediately began to get uncomfortable on the phone call, right? This is a perfect example. Jesus here says that they'll deliver you up, they will kill you, you'll be afflicted, and you will be hated of all nations for my name's sake. People will be rageful with you. They will be enraged because of his name. Many will be offended and will destroy one another and hate one another.